We're going to look at some basic tools that are found in Inventor. So when you first open Inventor, you're going to get a menu similar to this. Now down at the bottom, you might have an empty looking area here. That's where previous part files that you've worked on will be sitting. If you're looking to make a new file, which you likely are as you're coming in here, we want to go into the part file and start a new one. Now it'll default to the last part type that you opened. If you want to open one that is a specific unit of measure, you can just go to the new tab up here and it will bring up different options. So you can look into standard imperial, or we can go into metric, and I usually prefer working in metric because the 3D printing that we do, the software that we use is all based in metric as well, so then our designs will match up for size. So standard millimeters is a good part file to start with. Down at the bottom it shows you whatever parts you have open or are currently working on. Once you have your part open, let's go up over here where we're going to start a sketch. Now they give two options, start 2D sketch or start 3D sketch. We're going to start with a 2D sketch. Once you select that, it asks what work plane you want to work on. So as you highlight on them, you can see here which ones are lighting up. They're labeled in the corner, and our directional axis down here will show us as well which way everything lines up. So that also shows here on the front we have a view cube, so you can see that it's labeled front, right, and top. So depending on where it is that you're wanting to start your sketch off, you can choose which surface that you want to draw on. For what we're doing today, we're just going to choose our XZ plane. So we can see that's giving us the top of our box. Now we go into our 2D sketch mode, and there's a lot of similar tools that you'll find in AutoCAD here. So let's start out by clicking on rectangle. Now when you go to rectangle, there's a number of different rectangle options here. Some of these are not in AutoCAD but are pretty wonderful little tools. We're going to start with a 2-point center rectangle. So let's select the center to be basically our origin here, where our axis lines intersect. And then as we drag that out, we can now size our rectangle. So we can type in our size now, or we can just click our rectangle down and then add our size after by putting a dimension on and dimensioning it. So we're just going to size ours right now. So let's say we want 20 for our vertical axis, and then if we want to switch over to our horizontal, we just hit the tab button, and now we're there. Let's do 30. Push enter. Okay, so now we can see here that we have a 20 by 30 rectangle. If you do want to change that, you can simply just double click on the dimension, and maybe you change your mind and say, hey, I want that to be 35. Push enter, and now it'll automatically update your object. Okay, so let's do 20 and 35. We just had a little change there. And once we have created our rectangle, we're going to go to finish sketch. Okay, now we have our rectangle. We're now back in a 3D view mode. You can see here we have our view cube, and it's telling us that we're looking at the top corner here where we can see front, right, and top. Now we're going to take this 2D sketch and create a 3D model out of it. So to do that, we're going to use our Extrude Tool. So let's click on Extrude. Now it automatically selects that the surface that we've created. If you have multiple surfaces or multiple sketches, you would then click on the one that you want to extrude. Now in here we have a few different options. For right now we're just going to use the default direction, and then for distance, let's say we want our distance to be 25. Let's try that. And then so we'll type that into distance A, hit OK, and we have now made a block that is 25. Now right now we're looking at the front, right, and top. We can go on this view cube and we can click on different locations on it and spin our object around. If we get a little bit lost as to where we are, we can go and just hit the home key, and then it takes us back to our original view of front, right, and top. Another option that you can look at down in here is a navigational wheel. So you have zoom, rewind, pan. This is kind of neat here, your orbit tool. If you click down on orbit, you can just kind of rotate it to whatever view that you want. And again, if you get a little bit messed up and you kind of forget where you are, go back to the home key and put that back. Another way to navigate is the mouse roller. So you'll notice that the mouse roller is reversed compared to AutoCAD. You can go into settings and adjust that. If you hold down Shift and your mouse cursor, you get that orbit tool, or sorry, the mouse roller. If you hold it down without Shift, you get your pan. So having a finger on Shift and then using your mouse roller is a good way to kind of navigate your viewpoint on this. All right, now let's say that we want to add some detail to this shape that we made. We can go into Start 2D Sketch. And once we click on that, it's basically prompting us to choose a surface. So it says down here, select plane to create our sketch. As we hover over, it'll light up green. So let's say that we want to choose our front. So we're going to click on front. Now it spins us over to a two-dimensional view of our front. And what we can do now is create a shape on our front. Let's say that we want a rectangle in the center of this. Now in AutoCAD, you could set up a bunch of different layers, for example, construction layers. In this, we're going to just click right here and we're going to get essentially our construction layer. And if we want to find the center of this, a nice quick way is just to make an X across it. You're going to see the construction layers show up as a dotted line. So if we go like that and put that through there, okay. Now we've made our X, we can turn our construction layer off. So now we're back to object. Let's go in here and let's do that 2-point center rectangle again. We're going to choose the intersection for those lines as our center. And then let's say we want a 5 by 5 square. Okay. Now we can finish our sketch. And now we can go along and we can see this on the side of our object. The sketch is there. Let's try extruding that. So we're going to click on extrude. Now it automatically selected that for us. And it's asking how far we want to bring that out. So when we go here, now that we have a solid object, we get some Boolean outputs, meaning that we can join or cut or intersect. So later we'll look at cut, but right now we're just going to use join. And let's say we want this to stick out 5 millimeters as well. So we'll type in 5 and hit OK. All right, so we've just added a little feature there. Let's continue doing that. We're going to add some more. Let's go and do another 2D sketch. This time, let's go on to the top of our object. Okay. Oops, hit the wrong button there. 2D sketch, click on the top. All right, so now you can see here we have our top view. We can see everything that we've drawn so far. Let's now draw a circle. So we already have our origin as our center point. If you had another point you'd like to mark out, you could measure it with some construction lines. But now we're going to go to circle. And let's choose a 10 millimeter circle. So now that you've made it a 10 millimeter circle, you might look at that and be like, oh, I didn't quite want it that big. I need to adjust that. If you ever do, just like before, you can click on the dimension and change it. Maybe we change our mind and say, oh, you know what, we want it to be 8. So we can adjust it to 8. There we go. Now it automatically updates your sketch. When we're done, we go to finish sketch. And now we're going to look at creating a feature out of this sketch. So let's go over to our extrude, and it automatically selects our circle. Now, so far we've been pulling faces and pulling shapes out of our original object. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try pushing it down. Now, if you grab onto this arrowhead, you can manually adjust that distance if you're just trying to get it to look a certain way, or you can type that in. Now, it automatically was assuming that we want to add this feature going outwards, but if we want to change that, we can do it in one of two ways. We can either flip the direction, or we can tell it, no, we want to cut instead of join. So if we click on cut, it still is trying to pull it up, so we want to then change our direction. Now it's pulling it down into our object, and we get to decide how far down that is. Now, as we pull it down, you can do it just by visually looking at it, and you can always change your view while you're doing that. So I'm just going to use my orbit tool and look underneath here, and we can pull it. If we want to cut it all the way through, we can have it so it goes all the way through. Now, one important thing about if you're trying to make a hole or a shape go all the way through, instead of typing in a distance, like a distance that's further, we want to make sure that we're using our through all. And that's in case we update our model later and we end up making maybe this object to be larger, then it's still going to give you a hole at that depth, even though you might change this object from 25 units tall to 50 units tall. If we say through all, it'll automatically make that hole go through all the way in the object. So in this case, if we always want it to go through, we're going to define that. We're going to say through all, and then we hit OK. All right, let's take a look. We're just going to orbit through. So now we can see that hole right through our object. Very nice. Okay, couple other small little tools here we're going to look at. Let's look at our Fillet Tool. So similar to AutoCAD, except this is a 3D fillet. You can do 2D fillet. It's in your sketch as well. But if we click on Fillet and we get our fillet menu here, we can choose the radius. So let's say that we want to round over an edge. We can say, okay, let's make it 3 millimeters. We can adjust that. And then we simply click on the edge that we want to round over. We apply it. Okay. And now we have rounded over that edge. Now, as you're working here, you're going to notice that all of your commands end up shown on the left side here. And a good way to figure out what each command is just to simply highlight, hold your mouse over it, your cursor, and it'll highlight it and show you what exactly you did. So we can see our first extrusion was our main body there. Second extrusion was that little 5x5 rectangle. And then our third extrusion was our hole. And then finally we had our fillet. You can see that that gets highlighted as well. You can change and adjust these. So if we say, look at our original object that we were working on here, if we click the little plus sign beside it, it shows us our original sketch if we want to look at it. And then it shows us the feature that we created through the extrusion. If you want to change or edit either of those, we simply right click on it and we can say edit sketch. Now let's say we made that at 35, but we decide later, oh, you know what, that wasn't supposed to be 35. Remember how we had it at 30 and we want to make it back to 30? We can go in and change that and just edit this to 30. Now it's going to change our sketch. When we finish our sketch, it'll update our model and make that to 30 as well. We can also change our extrusion. So if we right click, our extrusion is called our feature. So if we go edit feature, now we had originally set it at 25. We might have changed our mind and said, oh, you know what, that should only be 20. Well, let's go and change our extrusion to 20. Hit OK, and now our model automatically gets updated. So always keep an eye on these tabs here. You always want to make sure that you do one sketch. After that sketch, turn that sketch into a feature. You're going to find as well that once you've used up a sketch into a feature, your sketch disappears on your model. You can bring that back as well, though, if, for example, you need it for something. Let's say we're looking at this sketch 2 here. We want to bring it back. We can right-click on that, and we can click on Share Sketch. Now what we've done is brought that sketch back because we might need it for something else we want to do in that area, and it was important information. Those are some fun tools you can try out in Inventor, and watch for the next video.